to which 10 years ago we gave the name of Forum della Città Mondo, as I was mentioning before, the Mudec has proposed annual programs devoted to the main countries and communities in Milan in terms of numbers or length of presence. In 2016 and 17, the protagonist was China. In 17-18, it was Egypt. In 19, Peru. While the activities in 2020 were devoted to the women of the world present in Milan. In 2021, on the other hand, Milano Città Mondo 06 Remix has focused on the theme of participation and accessibility to cultural production, also on the part of those who have a migratory background, a central theme within the framework of activities of a museum of contemporary culture, as Mudec actually is. This precious opportunity for telling stories has also been accompanied by a new display layout in the permanent collection of the Mudec, offering citizens an updated itinerary, also thanks to the large number of suggestions offered by the various cultural communities of the city, further underlying the intercultural vocation of the basis of the museum's missions itself. We are therefore faced with a challenge of a cultural character to define new development models that make it possible to welcome different narrations, also within the public institutions. Therefore, few weeks after taking up my post in a municipal authority as councillor with the responsibility for culture, I'm very happy to be able to open this reflection and this exchange of practices at international level. And here and now, I would like to thank all those present for their contribution toward this. I will now give and hand over to Director Marco Minoia, wishing you all an enjoyable day and every success in your work. So thank you so much for this live panel, and I give the mic to Director Marco Minoia. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Sacchi. And hello, everybody. I just would like to spend very few minutes to welcome you to this important conference and to the Mudec, Museum of Culture in Milan. Mudec is a strategic museum in the relations between the city and the many cultures present in Milan, between the city and the communities from other nations and other continents, migrant or settled in town. So, the Museum of Cultures in Milan is an important window on the great possibilities that the policy of exchange and intercultural relationship offer the city, in terms of growth, mutual knowledge, conflict resolution in town. With this aim, the Museum of Cultures have been working for years in the production of projects built with the hope of mutual awareness and respect. So I want to thank you, the museum, the curators, the program managers, all our staff and offices. The occasion of this public discussion is really a strategic opportunity for all of us. Today and tomorrow will be 2 intense days of discussion and debate with Italian and international museums, cultural institutions, and I'm really grateful to all of the hosts and speakers of these 2 days. For all of us, this is a real opportunity for growth and improvement in the work we do and in the consciousness of its importance. So, thank you all very much.
Good morning, everyone. The next speaker, Dottoressa Anna Maria Montalto, Mudec former director, unfortunately cannot attend the conference today. And Cristina Miedico, let me please address from her side a special thank you to all of you for attending the conference, and let me read her contribution. We are here today because we believe that cultural work with the community is the way to different goals and achievements, especially not only for the survival of museums and their meaning, but also for the development of cities and fruitful coexistence among all their inhabitants. Since 2018, the Mudec management has included the Ufficio Reti e Cooperazione Culturale, an office of the municipality of Milan that manages relations and the development of cultural projects with the international communities living in Milan and their most active citizens. Moving from the differences between culture toward the respect and the development of an inclusive culture, one that knows how to listen and how to give representation to the new citizens, has been our core mission for at least 10 years. Over the past 6 years, in collaboration with associations representing the international communities in Milan, we have run a 6-monthly cultural program. The aim of these programs is to raise awareness of a culture, its history of immigration, to trace the threads of its presence in the city, to understand the differences between the first and second generations. During the last 2 years, we faced transversal themes. In 2020, the women of the world in Milan. In 2021, the theme of participation and decolonization. These transversal themes have enabled us to tap into the young voters of the city, those of active citizens born, grow up, and educated in Milan that, despite their professional skills, writers, journalists, bloggers, teachers, musicians, scientists, urban planners, still today have problems of citizenship by suffering from racial discrimination. Nobody, and in particular certainly not a public cultural institution, can ignore these voices, as well as the new demands from all Western metropolis, and the increased ones also in Milan too. These observations and conflicts today must find the right place of expression in the museums of cultures, a place preserving and exhibiting an heritage originally belonging to people coming from non-European countries, today unable to give back their voice, to guarantee them accessibility to the museum, but also to cultural production in general. At Mudec, we have thought to change course. We have tackled issues and points of view that are often new for us with a self-reflective and self-critical intent. In 2021, we conduced an ethnographic research to capitalize all the past experiences, to receive feedback from the communities to face the future path of the Milano Città Mondo. This conference is a natural consequence of this questioning, aimed to exchanging the good practices of participation undertaken by other institutions and other ethnographic museums, at least at European level, but also critical issues, and to extend the communication network for the future as well. I wish you all every success in your work today. Now, Bianca Ravecchia, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bianca Ravecchia, and what we have just seen is a spot, an RD that was filmed to promote the launch of Milano Città Mondo, la città delle donne, the city of women. That was the 5th program of Milano Città Mondo, and I'm very touched in seeing it because the video was filmed on the 26th February 2020, and a few days after the first Italian episode of COVID-19. So when the total lockdown was not yet been imposed, but the city was almost empty, as you've seen. And the women you have seen are those who made up the steering committee of the project. And we had a claim for this period because, of course, we have had a lot of problem in seeing all our projects. But we say we delay, but we stay. And now it was just a little break before coming to our explosion. So my thanks to the director, to the councillor, and to Anna Maria Montaldo, but above all to Cristina Miedico, that precede me. And I am the head of this Network and Cultural Cooperation Office, Ufficio Reti e Cooperazione Culturale. We will say it in Italian. That is the office, as the councillor, director, and Anna Maria Montaldo has just explained. It's the office that currently take part in Mudec for public project, and that is tasked with the optimization of cultural project with the association and active citizen of non-European origin living in Milan. In particular, the office handles the Milano Città Mondo project, which is the participatory practice that today we wish to exchange view, to exchange as good practice, but as we often say, we are very, very interested not only in changing good practice, but also in critical assets, in critical point of view, because we are searching a path in which to go on, because I have to begin my report, because my report will touch some points that I hope will be useful to explain our path of development. And I will begin, we began, but I will now describe the beginning in 2011 of the Forum Città Mondo. That is what the councillor Sacchi said. And to arrive 2015, they are important important date. 2015 was the year of Expo, and it arrived the opening of Mudec, the Museum of Culture of Milano. And in that period, we began our public program that we called Milano Città Mondo. And then in 2020, became a participatory practice that was no longer monoethnical, but transversal, thematical, and not devoted to one only country. And also intergenerational. To then we arrive at the current edition, Milano Città Mondo Remix, that is concluded today, and which has placed the themes of participation, representation, colonial outlook, and institution as a focus. In the same time, Remix has been the program that has accompanied the inauguration of the Mudec's new permanent collection, Global Milano, the World Seen from Here, which will be presented by Carolina Orsini in the afternoon. So, and the Remix is also composed of many, many events. We began in April and have not really yet finished. Talks on cultural industry, lecture, workshop with teachers and young people from suburban neighborhoods, and performances, documentaries, decolonial walks, podcasts, and a lot of other things that some protagonists will speak about in this afternoon. And after me, an ethnographic research, which Silvia Iannelli and Andrea Steide and Besbir Mirioli will discuss immediately after my intervention. So I hope it will not bore you if I begin with the past, a relatively recent past, 10 years ago, but the journey can at times to be more interesting than the arrival. Or in any event, it's useful to understand vices and virtues, attempts and mistakes, and the past is the foundation of the present. So I tried to, this morning I tried to see my PowerPoint, but I had problems. So I hope now is all okay. I try. So just 1 minute. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Okay. So, first of all, I can tell you that Milano is a city of around 1,400,000 people, inhabitants, and 20% of these are of foreign origin. So the first boost came when Milano was chosen as a location for Expo 2015. And the Councillor for Culture decided that at the meeting with the countries of the world in Milano, that was so important, fundamental, that the inhabitants that were from those countries should make their own contribution to and tell their history. Not only guess our countries, but explain our country. So it was what the councillor made was a genuine call for proposal, and in the most beautiful room in Palazzo Reale came over 500 citizens who were exponents of association from over 80 countries. You can see some pictures about this type of reunion. That is City World Forum. The picture was made for Expo at time, but we prefer to call it in Italian Forum della Città Mondo. Yes. The establishment of a forum was in 2011, following a proposal, as I see you, I say you, sorry. And this was Palazzo Reale, Sala delle Cariatidi, and was really empty. It was really full, sorry. And after that, the forum, that was informal groups, but they decided, it was an enthusiastic participation, and the forum proposed itself as an essential space for sharing ideas, projects, and proposals for the development of cultural and economic policies in view of Expo 2015 and the construction of an universal welcoming during Expo 2015. The forum met in plenary and thematic working groups coordinated by representatives of the communities, and not monoethnical, I specify. They share and they divided in group to talk about interest and not about team and not about the country of origin. And so we had women and cultures, food, urban garden, and events related to Expo, because the theme of Expo was Feed the Planet, communication and cultural events, Museum of Culture. This is all are important, but Museum of Culture was particularly important because it was the desk in which director or staff of the preparing museum was together with the communities in Milano and the representing of community in Milano, interested in the same theme, how to construct, how to make all together a museum of cultures. And then the last one, participation and active citizenship. The last desk, participation and citizen, played a very important role in the Constitution in 2013, after 2 years, of the Associazione Città Mondo, World City Association, which brought together more than 100 associations of the international community in the area of the forum. It's a second, yes, because it's still alive, a second level organization. It means an association formed by other association, and the purpose was to be representative in relation with the institution, being a juridic subject, a formal subject able to manage for Italian and European project. Now, Associazione is still alive, not very active, but we hope every year they could be. And the president now, the actual president, is Besmir Rioli, that we will hear after my intervention. The forum has promoted and participated in many important events and manifestations, enriching the cultural offer of the city and helping to attract a growing number of citizens. You can see some events, because a lot of events was organized in that period. Now we are from 2015. It's the construction of museum, the inauguration of the museum, Mudec. This is a I think Carolina Orsini, if is still there, or Besmi Rioli could appreciate this picture, because it was the not yet ready Museum of Culture. So it was the worker, and Carolina Orsini, it's one of the chief curator of Mudec, but the others are from Museo the desk of Museo delle Culture, are exponent of Forum della Città Mondo. Now is the Museum of Culture inside. So to make a balance of Forum, because from that 2015, all the activities of Forum della Città Mondo and Associazione Città Mondo were take part inside the museum, not outside, or for the majority of part inside. And to have this type of group, informal or formal group, made with all the people interested and not divided between generation or ethnical or religious or something else. So there are positive results. First of all, the community involvement, and then active protagonist of new citizens. We try to involve a large number of second and third generation. Privileged area of reference for proposal and exchange with the administration, of course, because the constant and the frequent seeing, because I have to make just a notice. Comune di Milano activated Ufficio Reti almost exclusively for taking care of this project, to have 3 or 4 people and a little budget, but it's really important, I think, for a public administration, just to have a place and an office and some people devoted to relation with other people, for people not that you don't see normally inside the museum. They don't have the knowledge also for administration and bureaucratic things to arrive to show in important places their culture, or the expression of culture, of course. So it means that in a period not too long, we have respect and trust between the parts, and we have the basis to create and to have a dialogue between us. And this is important to make a constant relation, because the problem sometimes, I think, is to have some project with association or with communities, and then it's hard to keep this relation and to have trust in this relation in both parts. Sorry, this. Okay, these are mixed. About we had a lot of events, because at the beginning of Mudec, of the Museum of Culture, we try to ask to the forum and to the association also of Associazione Città Mondo to try to make a program every month or every 2 or 3 months of workshop, meeting, waiting for their proposal, and then of course helping to do the best for the museum inside. But of course the beautiful things was that in this way you could have a lot of things. For example, Syrian from Syrian refugee, we had you can see food, or course workshop of kitchen and cuisine, and also playing performer, and for example with culture, Azzara culture in Italy, film, from calligraphy and workshop of calligraphy. This is Book City when we speak about books from the other country and other not mainstream, but very interesting. And normally we present with this with also a sort of performing arts or playing music or poetry. So it's what, yes, this is about Sinti and Rome. And what we would like to say is that in that case was a various and rich offer, but we thought that for the museum it was an urgent need to have a public program very with a well structure, and so it was important to make all is not make alone, of course. Normally we make a sort of call for ideas and call for proposal, and we try to discover new people, new citizen, new association that could help us. And but we decided to put together the competence of the museum with his heritage, with his curator, and to put together the communities and the urgent, also for the city, the urgent need to know the migration, to know the citizen that coming from some places in the world, and the reason for why they came in Italy, and the reason and their culture, and because we know that prejudice and discrimination are still alive, and so it's important for all the people, because we try to do this with laboratory for education and for children, but we try also to involve all the communities, but also the people that normally arrive at museum to see the main exhibition or the blockbuster exhibition. So we had 5 editions of this before a mix, and I see you just the picture of Eritrea, Ethiopia, that was the first, not for number or length of this migration, but because Eritrea and Ethiopia, with Somalia too, are the problem of touch the problem of Italian colonialism. So we began with them. It was above all, it was 2015, so it was above all a photographic picture exhibition, and it was made expressly a film as Marina in the community in Milano. And then the year after, 2016, we began a long research, also anthropological research, because in the things is for us not only to have a good relation and to try to have a good relation with the community in Milano. I ask your comprehension for my word community, because I know that it's not real anthropological, not correct, not right. But I think we can understand what I mean. And we make also an anthropological work inside for example, in this case, the Chinese families, with some students of anthropology at university. In that case, was University of Insubria, because one member of our scientific committee was a professor in that university, and he was Daniele Brigadori Cologna, that is a professor of problematic about immigration, study of immigration, and he teach Chinese. So it was a good thing for our relation, and also for the museum, because in that case we can museum add some research, some good things for their archive, and also we can show heritage from the first Chinese that arrived in Italy 1 century ago, and to ask for this material, for these objects, very important for a museum. Also was a good and very lucky exhibition and research, because in this case every time we don't know before what we will find in our research, and in how to organize the Milano Città Mondo in that every year. In that case, we found a Chinese, an Italian Chinese of a third generation, that is an illustrator. So it was really important, because we used to have a graphic novel as a catalog, or to explain for or to work with school, and to make some things about graphic novel. We also committee a video of animation The name is of the project in this case is Chinaman, and you can see, if you are interested, also a website, chinaman.it, that is really completed about what we did in that case. And we had also a video, an animation video, an artistic animation video, with the name Chinaman, of course. And this video, you can see it because it was made in 5 copies, and we had 1 copy at the museum. So if you will be able to come to Milano and to see the museum, to visit the museum, you can ask for this 22 minutes of film that describe all the history of the first Chinese in Milano, and is the good things is that it's made speak in Italian, but subtitle in English, of course, but also in Chinese. This was the graphic novel. Second, third generation. Yeah. Then we arrived to Egypt, and Egypt was another important exhibition because it's important to speak about Arabic culture, because the prejudice for Muslim or for immigrants from Egypt and the countries, African countries, is very hard. So we had to made a lot of work, but it was a work very participated. Egyptian community was really enthusiastic, and so we had a lot of things. This is a sort of patchwork, but we had great participation, film, reading, poetry, also a documentary that in Milano Città Mondo every year we call for a documentary. And we had a sort of concourse with University of Milano, Università degli Studi di Milano, and every year we give a sort of recognizing for the film that can describe some or telling history or describe some things that can hurt or identified people, bridge between different countries, different cultures. Then Peru was the 4th edition. Peru is also the 4th community for number of presence, and it's close to the museum because museum has a lot of heritage from Peru. And when we try, we try to do with Milano Città Mondo some focus and public program, but at the other floor some exhibition for historical or focus for about some heritage about that country and that culture. This is the competition for film and videos, of which I speak about. This is the sort of party for Peru. Is important because from that edition we decided also to give a chance to street art and street artists, and so we ask to a street artist, a very, in Italy is very famous, but I think all over the world is famous. The name is Seth 01, and is a Peruvian street artist that had just made a murale in the suburban neighbor in Milano, making Sarita Colonia, what was the slide before. Yes, that is the first one in a quarter, the suburban neighbors in Milano. And this is Sarita Colonia, is a sort of important figure, not really a saint, but almost for Peruvian people. And we decided to bring Sarita Colonia to the museum. And so we asked him, and the result was this. We decided to have Sarita Colonia, and also we are the Museum of Culture, so also a Chinese or Asiatic girl and an African boy. This year we have had a collective murale, a collective work of street art based on the principles of arte voodoo. We had an artist from Haiti, and he worked with a lot of people, and so we have a new one. And then we arrived at 2020, La Città delle Donne. It was a real new concept in Milano Città Mondo, because we decided not really to leave, but to change, because also Milano was a bit change. So we were able to think not only mono-ethnical, but to give a team and to discover new citizens, new participants, because the problem of participation is constantly for us and for the museum, of course. And for this edition, we decided to have a sort of a steering committee formed particularly with women of the second generation, and very not always with an association, exponent of association, but very involved and with very competence in study of gender, of everyone was or journalist or a writer. Someone was also scientist. Also, we involved artists, of course. This was an Iranian dancer. And now they arrived at Remix. We change a bit another time, because the rapid, the fast socio-political change of recent years, and also the theoretical advance in social research, make it necessary to continuously update the approaches and the practice of museum of culture in relation to citizens with migrant backgrounds, and also from non-European countries. So we were witnessing, for example, the explosion of anti-racist protests by the Black Lives Matter movement, the maturation of reflection on the role of museum in terms of social cohesion, and the fast development of study and research on Italian colonialism, with the consequent growth of a post-colonial consciousness and the admission of the need for a decolonization of cultural institutions, starting with schools and museums. So the focus of this year was also to ask ourselves how decolonize cultural practice, and a lot of our question: who, for example, speaks in the museum or in our museum? Why our museum of culture, especially of culture, are so whiteness, and beginning from this with these answers, with these questions, the answers are complicated. We try to make an inquiry also in about the accessibility of people coming from other countries, racialized people, in our institution and our museum. So we try to do this in cultural places. Cultural path. So we try to focus how is the production, the cultural production, for example, for art, for the actor, and for the writer, and in every country. We try also to make a sort of workshop. These are Shi Yang, Chinese actor, quite famous, but as he told us, his role are every time asked to be Chinese. Nobody asked him to do Hamlet. And Bintu Autarra, the same. In the case of women, African women, is they ask you to be prostitute, or if you are old, you are every time the mother of some of a terrible guy. And these are our questions. Who is the other museum? And La Cura delle Parole is a workshop that we will see. Nadisha Uyangoda speak about in the afternoon. I think it's finished. So I thank you for your time, and I pass through the next panel about the research we had this year, to Silvia Iannelli, Besmir Riolli, and Andrea Steit. But just have a little frame of a video we had this summer about the theme of who call different actors and how can they have a role. Thank you so much.
Bianca, could you please close sharing?
Sorry. Yeah.
Cominciamo questa sera il secondo appuntamento di Milano Città Mondo Remix.
Immersione, continuità e accompagnamento. Sono tre parole chiave che mi vengono in mente. Immersione perché secondo me ci sono dei ragazzi talentuosissimi anche come attori, ma sono nel sottobosco. Continuità perché noi abbiamo più o meno la stessa età, 42, e lei è più giovane di me. Il punto è che chi è che continua? E la questione dell'accompagnamento è estremamente importante.
Che penso che noi abbiamo bisogno, che la società italiana ha bisogno, come noi abbiamo bisogno della società italiana per stare insieme e vivere questa roba qui.
La domanda secondo me interessante è: chi è che istituzionalmente in Italia o anche da parte del pubblico accompagna questi ragazzi? Accompagna coloro che non sono più ragazzi però hanno tanto da trasmettere.
E quindi è anche fare un discorso di il pubblico, quale pubblico è pronto a comprare un prodotto con protagonisti con background migratorio.
Ci sarà qualcuno che si ingegna e produce, no? Produce cultura. Questo secondo me è importante gridare al cielo.
C'è uno...
Now, Andrea Stein, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Stein. I am an anthropologist, and in 2021, I had the pleasure of directing the ethnographic research with Silvia Ianelli and all my students from the Visual Anthropology course at New Academy of Beautiful Art, NABA, in Milano, in order to understand the effect of previous edition of MCM, Milano Città Mondo, and the impact that Mudec intercultural programs had in terms of concrete decolonization and participation within the museum space and more generally on the cultural activities promoted in recent years to encourage interaction between different cultures. Was a difficult work because there is a strange period. Ethnographic research was mutilated in its possibilities by the pandemic and the closure we were all experiencing. So we tried to experiment with a new way of interview and creating a participation in ethnographic file with virtual possibilities with a Zoom or Meet or I don't know the different platform. The fortune of having a large group of researchers, and for me it's important thank all students, a lot of people. The name is Rachele Adda, Nicole Califano, Lucrezia Costa, Cristian Nirvana D'Amato, Domenico Greco, Giulio Frezzato, Gabriella Colandra, Francesca Liantonio Vittoria, Mascellaro, Silvia Ontario, Elisabetta Pagella, Tonia Paladini, Paola Petronave, Laura Pisu, Agnese Politi, Federico Protti, Eleonora Reffo, Oliver Russo, Emilia Sanna, Marta Seminero, Francesco Scala, Francesca Spicci, Veronica Tremolada, Anna Del Torchio e Yuk Swan Dong. A lot of students, and it's very, very strange, the ethnographic file in a pandemic situation. But with a large group, it was possible. And made possible to meet many people who in previous years had taken part and partly designed, promoted the MCM, the Milano Città Mondo culture program. But not only the culture program. The aim of research was to understand if it's possible to tell the plurality and richness of the new Milanese, the new people form part of the city, and understanding the possibilities of interculture in development of the city. During the dozen and dozen of interview, meetings, workshop, many issues emerged. But the thing that came back with almost all the people interviewed was the big gap, the big gap between ideal and real, between theoretical perspective of museum and practical realization. In fact, the important thing will be to make concrete the words that are used, which cannot be an excuse to wash the conscience. To use the word of one interview, Mudec in this moment is a schizophrenic entity. Without doubt, the street token is the right one. But the great challenge now is to make concrete the possibilities of a new city, of a new museum of culture, of a really Milano Città Mondo, not only a beautiful word, but reality of a new city. Thank you for your attention. I will not take up any more of your time because I will pass the word to my colleague Silvia Iannelli. I think now is the moment for think in the possibilities of the future.
Okay. Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, everybody. And thanks to Mudec and to Ficeretti for the possibility of being here and sharing this part of our work. I want to thank above all Professor Andrea Steid for his work and his guide, because having the possibility to collaborate to an ethnographic research with an anthropologist of that experience and culture was very important to me, and I learned so much. And I also want to thank you, all the students of the visual anthropology course, for their professionality and seriousness they put in the whole research. In this speech, I will analyze some of the crucial aspects that emerged from our ethnographic survey and from the many interviews that the different research group held. I will concentrate on three main issues we have highlighted as the core of the reflection on the museum and public program role in enhancing the participation and the representation of cultural minorities of the city. The three main themes are, the first one, the path of Milano Città Mondo Association and the program. The second one is the relation between the museum and the living cultures represented by the minority communities. And the third is the image of the museum and the discrepancy between theory and practice that was already underlined by Professor Steid. So in our research, approximately 60 interviews were conducted during the period from February to the end of August 2020. And each group of students, researchers, focused on a specific edition of Milano Città Mondo program. So Eritrea, Ethiopia, Chinaman, Egypt, Peru, the City of Women, and so on. The methodology of our research was to intersect the voices of the experience and the experience of the people who took part in the construction of the Milano Città Mondo program on one hand, with the political intents of the municipality and cultural operators on the other hand, by interviewing many of them and also by using the official documents produced by the institution over the years. So I will concentrate on the first theme that I underlined, that is the historical path of the program that also Bianca Ravecchia described before. In the research, we analyzed the phases of the development of the cultural experience of Milano Città Mondo. In fact, we turned out not only to the participants and creators of the 5 thematic programs since the opening of Mudec in 2015, but also to those who, in the previous 4 years, collaborated in the birth and development of the Forum of Città Mondo, and subsequently of the association Milano Città Mondo. So several Milanese cultural realities that in 2011 had been channeled into the forum with the call Expo Chiama Mondo, have in fact continued to collaborate in the events of the MCM programming even after the conclusion of the forum experience, albeit in different ways. Very briefly, this historical path can be identified some keystones that have marked the path of MCM from the point of view of the operational management and cultural policies. The first phase is the one that we can call, of course, phase of the World City Forum. The second phase is that of Milan Città Mondo Association. And the third one is the phase of the direct management and the control cabin. The first phase lasted about 2 years and was inaugurated on October 2011 with the birth of the World City Forum at the behest of the then Councillor of Culture, Mr. Stefano Boeri. So it was a huge and fluid agglomeration of association, about 600, which by affiliation or by the object of their expertise are involved in promoting interculturalism and enhancing cultural diversity. So it's born with the aim of including diasporic association in the Expo 2015 program. It meets in plenary assemblies, it has been explained by Bianca Ravecchia before, and it is structured in 5 thematic tables. With the table named Museum of Culture, the close link between the Mudec and the so-called International Association is sanctioned, declaring that inside the museum, once it is open to the public, they will find their home and the place designated to host their cultural expression. So at first, therefore, there is not a complete identification between the forum and the museum, since the activities of the former go far beyond those of the latter in a city dimension that can take advantage of the wide economic possibilities of the preparation of the Expo. The representatives of the communities that have seen the birth of the World City Forum remember the initial phase as a sort of golden age, sometimes chaotic but fertile and full of expectations. And the great expectation was probably the one or the opening of the Mudec, which was imagined by the association as their home and the place where they could carry out, with the support of the municipal administration, their cultural activities outside the usual marginal and peripheral circuits. And so this is the first period of this experience. Then the second phase is that we can call the World City Association, that was born in October 2013. So there are more than 117 member association, and it is defined as the legal entity through which it will be possible to implement and manage the projects and objectives of the Forum della Città Mondo. Thus, the relationship between the Forum and its association and the museum, on the other side, become closer, and the two poles began to converge, even if not completely, and continues to have two separated identities. Moreover, from a fluid and multi-faced organism as the Forum, the administration decided to pass to a more structured and identifiable element, that is the second level association called Associazione Città Mondo. Some of the interviewees we held give an account of this crucial passage and the difficulties experimented with the decision of changing the form of the organism, whose presence is described from some of the participants as a sort of glorious pre-expo period, where the attention and the efforts of the Cultural Council was strongly devoted to the development of a stable relationship with the diasporic communities. And I briefly quote one of the interviewees that says, "We had to ask ourselves if the communities were ready to make such a passage. There are decisions that have been taken by the municipality of Milan. It was a new experience for them too." The Forum was a very flexible and fast organism, but now the association is added. The Forum doesn't exist anymore. The association becomes the formal and official interlocutor of the municipality of Milan. "We had perceived this bond," says the interviewee. "The Forum is there, the Forum is not there, all very chaotic." So I proceed in 2015 with the museum opening. The ACM receives the management of two specific museum spaces. One is the organizational activity spaces, and the second is the multipurpose space, which aimed to become a creative laboratory open to the public. And we arrived to the third phase. In 2018, we assist to another important change in the life of the association and in the relation between the museum and the diasporic communities. That is explained by some of the interviewees as a result of a sort of a post-expo fall of interest toward the diasporic communities by the municipality. Until 2018, actually, the headquarters of the association is the museum location. That then ceased to exist with the creation of the museum library on the ground floor. Even though it was characterized by a succession of different events and organizational methods, the ACM experience can be considered formally concluded with the closing of the museum organizational headquarters. This event, in fact, shifted the center of gravity of the management of the Milano Città Mondo program within the municipal office, and in particular, within the Office of Networks and Cultural Cooperation. Despite this, from a strictly formal point of view, the ACM has never been declared dissolved, and some of its members continue to represent themselves in interviews as being part of the association organs. Again, a quotation from one of our interlocutors' interview. "Mudec was a very difficult and bitter test of the coexistence of the relationship between Città Mondo and the city of Milan, and an extremely tiring project was concluded. This was a divorce that was never declared, let's say." So the actual assets of the organizational structure is based on the concept of cabin of control and scientific committees, a group of experts and active citizens with diasporic origins that conceives and proposes the annual program of activities that changes every year with the principle of rotation of assignments and contribution. Also, the nature of the program shifted from a mono-ethnic yearly focus to a transversal thematic one, where people with different background and experiences meets inside the control cabin. I very briefly continue with the relationship between MCM and the Mudec. because as soon as we began with the interviews sessions, we realized that the identity and the perception of the Milano Città Mondo are inseparable from those of Mudec, and that, in the mind of our interlocutors, the cultural program and the museum coincided, stratified, or penetrated each other profoundly. It is therefore impossible to investigate the sense of belonging to MCM without analyzing the perception and the relation with the museum by the interviewees. They are aware of the fact that this body belongs to a complex and interconnected agglomerate which sometimes experiences a problematic relationship between its different parts. In the interviews, a multiplicity of emotions and experiences emerged with respect to the museum, the place that hosted the most of the events of the various programs. In the majority of cases, we believe we can speak of a perception of subalternity of the participants toward the museum. Again, a short quotation from an interview. I felt at home in this series of events. It was really nice, but I felt like we were a state within a state within a state. You know, like when there is Italy versus the rest of the world, only once in a while there is the rest of the world. I wish it wasn't like that, but that the rest of the world was always there. In some cases, for example, the institution was defined by the interviewees as a schizophrenic museum, which has not yet found its own identity, referring to the opposing tensions that animate the cultural life of the institution. In some cases, there was a low understanding of the relationship between the museum, the exhibition, and their own role as participants in the MCM program, as seen, for example, in some of the interviews conducted around MCM 02, Egypt, for which the interviewees state that everything revolved around the exhibition on the Pharaoh Amenopis, but they found it strange that they had not been part of the process of making the exhibition and did not understand the meaning of this connection. The picture that emerges is that of a museum body formed by different sectors that have different perspectives and purposes that make people feel the lack of a stable connection with the rest of the museum sector, thus making it difficult to create a strong sense of identity belonging to the place. The last point is the one introduced by Professor Steid, that is the image of the institution and the discrepancy between theory and practice. In examining the achievement of the objectives of Milano Città Mondo, we thought it would be useful to cross-reference them with those stated in the Mudec manifesto, precisely because the museum statute defines the relationship with the diasporic communities as one of the main driving forces of its cultural policies. The valorization of the cultural differences in relation with the diasporic communities is frequently affirmed as the museum mission. I quote the cultural counselor, Mr. Attorno, in his interview, Mudec is a castle that is constituted by the contribution of all the foreign communities of the city. Again, in the interview we had with him, the former cultural counselor, Mr. Del Corno, enunciates the slogan he coined for the Mudec, from the difference of culture to the culture of difference. As he himself states, it is a vision that intends to enhance the plurality of cultural, religious, and social richness of the city of Milan, and sees Mudec as the place delegated to achieve a synthesis of this. In the association Milano Città Mondo statute, instead, the relationship with Mudec is not established in an unequivocal way as founding element of its political and cultural action, referring to a more generic objective of enhancing the cultural heritage of diasporic and migrant communities of the city. So considering what emerges from the research work, we believe we can say that some of the statutory objectives have been reached by the various editions of MCM. The expositive and informative intent of the cultural element peculiar to the context to which the annual programs have been dedicated has been developed in multiple forms, and its effectiveness is testified in several interviews. Many of those interviewed say that they were enthusiastic about the activities planned and the possibility to given to their association to have visibility and space. It is important to note that one of the main reasons for the satisfaction of the interviewees was the sense of recognition and legitimacy of their activities and history on the part of the public institution. In many of the cases we examined within the context of Mudec, the added values lies above all in having a space within an institutional framework, and this is perceived as a recognition of value and a source of pride. The sense of legitimacy goes hand in hand with the issue of self-representation and freedom of expression. Where the sense of pride in the recognition of one's history and cultural belonging is strongest, there is also a satisfaction with the possibility realized within the MCM framework of affecting the public representation of one's community of origin outside the usual stereotypes and prejudices. The achievement of the objective of creating transcultural networks that cross the boundaries between national communities can only be considered partial. In fact, during the research, it was found that, mainly due to the limitation of the annual programming to a single national community, there were rarely moments of interrelation with subjects belonging to different national communities. A change in this direction has occurred with the creation of the most recent experience of transversal programming and with the birth of the control cabins. In the interviews conducted with people who participated in the City of Women palinsesto, for example, it was noted that the creation of cross-community relationships between people who would not have met in different contexts and the birth of a path of reflection around themes of common interest. So a sensitive growth in the conscience and in the need to participate to the cultural life of the institution in an active way has been detected in the interviews. The theme of who speaks for who emerged in a clear way, together with a clear will of not appearing as a testimony of a story told by others, but as an active agent of self-representation and decision. In the relation with the cultural institution, there is a strong claim for recognition and for being treated as adults with full rights of speech, and not as a child to be saved or guided. I propose the last quotation from one of the interview. That is, there was a need of representation, and in my opinion today, there is much more with a difference, that the communities, the people are no longer those of 10 years ago. For the municipality of Milan, it is a challenge that I think is struggling to understand, because it's one thing when you take children by the hands and tell them what they have to do, because that's how things are done in this house. And it is another thing when you think you are taking children by the hands, but instead they not only know these things well, they know them better than you. When these children aren't the same as they were before, you can't act like you did before. And the interview continues with these words. Municipality doesn't have to flirt with the community with the hope of telling them how to be represented or what they need to do to be represented. No, there is no need for that anymore, 10 years ago there was, today there isn't. Today there are figures within the communities absolutely able to create groups, to write projects, to implement them, to report on them, to do advocacy with institutions, to sit at the tables with institutions. There are all the ingredients to do these things. Today, there are the ingredients to say what we can collaborate on. So, just to conclude, now the request and the proposal of many of the people who took part to the survey is to take back the work with the diasporic communities, taking into account the deep changes occurred in the identity of the city within these 10 years. We have gathered the request of constructing a task force of diasporical background people, which is able to speak and interact with the communities. And I think this is an interesting starting point to proceed with the work. So I thank you for your attention and leave the word to Besmir Rioli, one of the most crucial witnesses of the whole Città Mondo history and last president of the Associazione Città Mondo. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Silvia. Do you hear me? Oh, good morning. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for the invitation and congratulations for your research. I take this opportunity to wish good luck for the new post to the Chancellor for Culture, Mr. Tommaso Sacchi, and I hope soon to have the opportunity to meet him. Listening to the results of this research, I think that my friends to Mudec and the Municipality of Milan have a lot of work to do. So I think the question, the real question is why the institutions want to involve diaspora communities. Why? Do we know why? Today, 10 years after the creation of the Forum Città Mondo, we are still talking about how and why institutions should involve the diaspora communities. It's a pity because Milan is the city that had the courage to successfully promote co-development calls for associations with a migratory background, demonstrating to the country and to Europe the potential of these associations to implement international cooperation projects in their country, but also in Italy. It was the first city in Italy to do that. Milan also is the city that has understood the potential of the diaspora communities and in 2011 courageously set up the Forum Città Mondo, giving life to the largest multicultural, non-formal institution in the country. The forum was divided in 5 working groups and carried out many good results. One of the outputs of these working groups was a rich schedule of multicultural events carried out at Mudec. We had therefore drawn up a line of collaboration with the institutions, which was suddenly interrupted by the administration decisions. In the meantime, following a strong push from the administration, another group of the forum had fulfilled its mission, setting up the second level association, Città Mondo. In this way, the municipality of Milan finally had formally recognized a legal entity to entrust two spaces at the Mudec. The collaboration, we know, between the two realities became more and more difficult and tiring. On one hand, the association was a young and complex body. The members of the board of directors worked voluntarily and belonged to about 10 or more different nationalities. On the other hand, the municipality of Milan, which often claimed control of the activities, considered the associations much too young and not ready to manage certain projects. What was the sad result of this difficult collaboration? First, the municipality decided to take off the spaces dedicated to the associations, the ACM, at the Mudec, and then gradually the two parties distances themselves. In fact, today we talk about the Città Mondo program and not about Città Mondo associations. Now the past, I think the past has become history, and the responsibility for this divorce lies with both parties involved, municipality of Milan and association, Città Mondo associations. What is uncertain is the present and the future of this relationship. So, what do we want to do? Do we still have the political courage to reconnect with communities, or do we limit ourselves to simple claims such as Mudec is home of the foreign cultures without the communities in it? At last, I can say before decolonizing the museum, I would make in the Museum of Living Cultures. I would make it the Museum of Living Cultures. How do we do that? Let's talk about it. The diaspora communities are ready. Thank you so much. Hello?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Silvia, and thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Veshmir. Thank you, Silvia. And I don't know, for close the panel, I would like to thank once again all the students who took part in the ethnography research, and obviously Silvia Iannelli, Veshmir. And I would like to stress that now is the time to make the theories concrete and continue with the street that has been started, and have a good day before reflection. There is
the voice.
Il microfono, Silvia.
Sorry, I don't think there are questions at the moment. For us, we wrote that if there are questions that can be written in the chat of the two Facebook pages or the YouTube channel where the conference is going online. But I don't see question at the moment. So maybe
there is one in chat here.
Yes, it is not. Maybe this is not a question for the panel because it's a technical, detailed question about the documentaries. So I would maybe answer in another moment. And so we can go on with the presentation, with the speech, of course. And I will leave the word to Anna Chiara Cimoli, that is one of the members of the scientific committee of the conference, that will introduce the following panel, and I think she also has a question for us. So of course, Anna, you can pose us the question.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for this very, very interesting and crystal clear analysis. Very critical in the very good sense that Bianca mentioned before, because that's what we are talking about, institutional critique, meaning how can we learn from each other's within, outside the institutions, between public and private, and really expressing our citizenship at large. My question is for Bejmir in particular. I cannot see you, but I know you're there. And
yes, I'm here.
Yes, hi, nice to meet you again. And since you've been there for a very long time as an observer and as an activist and as a frontline, very important reference point, I would like to ask you maybe if you can articulate a bit more how the city has changed in the last year. What you said was very strong and very clear to me. It is time to maybe adjust our vocabulary, and behind the vocabulary, of course, our understanding of the city and of its vital forces. So I'm very interested in your own viewpoint, having you been there with so many different, under so many different circumstances. So can you please help us understand a bit more? What have you seen? What city have we become? As a city, as a broad tissue of people with their diversity, does it still make sense to speak about we, them, our, yours? I mean, tell us more.
Yes. I think we should speak. We should speak when we refer to the communities. We should speak to them and our, or vice versa, because it's maybe in the last 4 or more years, the administration has not taken consideration the presence of the communities in Milan. Okay, we have a city that promotes courageously Forum Città Mondo, put together more than 500 communities resident in Milan, and now we have a city without communities. So I think it's a good time to recalculate the dialogue, to recalculate how we can collaborate. For this reason, I underlined at the beginning of my speech the questions. Why the institutions want to involve the diaspora communities? Are the institutions able to answer this question? I think it's important to answer this question because maybe we can understand more. I think we did a great job with Forum Città Mondo. We tried to did a good job with Milano, with Città Mondo associations. There was difficult from the both sides. But now, what do we have now? We have a museum. Yes, of course. We have professionals that works in the museum. But for me, is a museum without the communities, without the living cultures. Is a museum with dead cultures. Beautiful, but they are not living cultures. So the challenge is a challenge for the municipality of Milan, not the challenge of the communities. The challenge is: do we, the administration, do I want to try again to involve the communities? And why? If I answer these questions, maybe we can put together around the round table, and let's put a new guideline for the future collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see there is another question. Maybe Silvia, you want to pick it up?
Yes. I see that the question is, apparently Associazione Città Mondo was a failure in terms of inclusion practice. What will you take from that experience, and how do you suggest in terms of practices and tools to carry on the local inclusion to guarantee a multicultural representation and storytelling? So I don't know if maybe we can answer the three of us, and I think this could maybe be a question for the municipality and for the people who work in a stable way in the office of networks and cultural cooperation. But I will try to answer regarding what emerged from the research. So I don't think that saying that Associazione Città Mondo is a failure, it's really fair, but because I mean we didn't find out an actual failure, but on the other side, as we have said, an important feeling of proud belonging to what it has been done in the past years, but of course a feeling of divorce and changing in the last years, of course. So, but I would not say failure, but maybe need to rethink and to recognize some critical points. This is the image I have after having held the research. Regarding the what do you suggest in terms of practices and tools? As I underlined at the end of my speech, we gathered some proposal from the people we interviewed, and one of these proposals is to take back the work with the communities, but with a different conscience and with a different attitude from both sides. So with the idea, we are not children anymore, we are not people who need to be guided in a full way inside the administration, but we are professionals, we are people who can make their own way in the relation with the institution. So one of the proposal we find out is to create a task force, a group of people of diasporical origins that are capable, that are able to dialogue, to speak, and to gather the ideas of the diasporic communities. And this maybe could be one of the proposal that we can do to the administration in this moment. So this is what we have found out inside the interviews. Of course, a need to find a new way to participate and to dialogue with the administration and with the museum. I hope I have answered the question, but maybe Besmir or Andrea have other things to say. Thank you.
Silvia, I think your answer is perfect, but 2 words on ethnography, on my work, on your work, because I think there is a problem for understand the ethnography mission, because in ethnography, the result of this ethnography is not my voice. Is not my idea on Museo or my idea on the Milano Città Mondo. Ethnography is the voice of the people we interviewed. and the people, the structure of the Milano Città Mondo, of the associazioni, no? And this is the result of the research. It's not my political or ethical idea on the decolonization culture or the Museo Mudec. This is important because it's not my or your idea, I think. No, I have the idea of this difficult program, but the research is not my voice. It's the voice of the interviewer.
Yes, totally agree with you. Thank you.
So if there aren't further questions, I might maybe keep to the next panel, which is practices of participation and institutional critique. And I welcome 4 international guests, whom I do thank very much for being here, for having shared, not only for sharing this morning together, but also for having shared previous reflections and thoughts, and having exchanged viewpoints and really practices. So what I asked them, and I'm going to introduce them one after the other because I believe you all have the program. Actually, I asked them to share their ideas about 3 axes, 3 issues. The first one is how do you understand, both as an individual and as a cultural institution, the concept of decolonization, the concept of participation, and of institutional critique? How do you articulate it in your practice? Also with an accent on participation, which, as we all know, is a very slippery idea. Is it enough? I mean, and what is participation in the end, and how do we evaluate its effectiveness or the contrary of it? How do you keep together the theoretical framework and the everyday work, the theory and the practice? Do you have a theoretical framework you refer to? And if so, does it prove right when it's time to put it, to translate it into practice? Or how do you reshape it every day through your own professional practices? And the third one is pointed at the future. Which horizon do you look at? Which aims, which objectives, which challenges do you face in the near future, and maybe not so near future, not so close future? So it is very much about, if you want, we can think of theoretical frameworks as something we have met and learned in our histories, while practice is our present, is our everyday work and task and maybe fight. And then there is an horizon, which is our future. So just to sum up a little bit, which were the main questions we shared. And I know they are very big questions, but our guests were so nice. They accepted to keep their talk quite short in order to facilitate dialogue in the end. So feel free to ask questions. So I welcome our first guest, Agustina Andreoletti. She's events manager and digital outreach at Rautenstrauch Museum in Cologne. Welcome, Agustina. You have about 15 minutes, or more or less, let's say 15 to 17, and you're very welcome. Floor is yours. I think we have a technical problem. I see Agustina had to leave the group. We wait for her to come back. Just 1 minute, if not, we reorganize our panel. Yes. I cannot hear you. I don't know. Yeah, nobody can. So there is. No. Okay, so don't worry, Agustina. Maybe we ask Danielle if she wants to be the first one. And Agustina, take your time, and I will maybe try and help you if I can in any ways. So we skip to Danielle Kuiten, who is a good friend. Thank you very much for being here with us. And Danielle is co-curator and acting director of Imagine IC Amsterdam. And she's also chair of ICOM-COMCOL, the International Committee for Collecting. Danielle, thank you very much for being here with us. We really are very interested in your presentation. So please, floor is yours.
Thank you so much for your invitation. I quickly go and see. I'm not so accustomed to work with sharing in Teams. So, well, Agustina is still trying to get on. I'm trying to get on my presentation. It seems to take ages. It's loading, so I don't know what that means.
Yeah, we just wait.
The other option is, because I shared my presentation as well, that you started up, maybe, on your side.
Yes. So let me just see what we can do.
Because it's a shame if we lose too much of the valuable time of the conference, because it doesn't connect with me to share.
Ooh. So can I ask, okay, so Agustina is there.
Okay, I'm there. Now my mic works. I think the presentation is gonna work. So let's see.
Okay, so.
Okay.
We do
Let's go.
So as Anna, so first of all, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to hear you and also like hear about your work in Milano. So I work in the museum. So I work at Rautenstrauchios Museum. That's the ethnographical museum in Cologne, Germany, and the only one in Nordrhein-Westfalen, so the province we're located. And I started working in the museum July last year. So I did the production of this exhibition, and since January, as Anna said, I create the public program and specifically the digital program. So today I'm going to present this case study or this work. This is an exhibition we opened last year, this year, I don't know when we are, this year, January. And it's a huge exhibition with different actors, modules, programs. So I wanted to show a short video of to give some impressions. Can you hear the sound?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So it's 2 minutes video, so you have a sort of different impression what the exhibition is about. So the exhibition is it was the starting point of a process. So it was meant to be a platform and sort of input to engage with what we call participation, or a kind of like playground, also battleground for do our work and test different things, engage in different ways. And for me, it's important that like to present this short video, because like an exhibition is not a book. So this idea of how we can have things in space, even we can create space online, but how we can move in those spaces, have the affordances that maybe also the non-discursive aspect of participation communication has, and taking into account also different materialities and ways of presenting things, ways of creating room for people to work in, to work with, and to develop themselves. So I will, first of all, like that's the the exhibition, how it looks like from above. It's a very labyrinthic exhibition, and that's why it was important for me to like show you, give you a basic understanding of what we did. So we have as like the main structure. So the exhibition itself is about 500 years of anti-colonial resistance in the global South. And so for us, it was also important to not take that only as a theme, a topic, but also as a way of working. So how can we present those topics, facilitate those topics? Because I think that's a difference between creating and facilitating. So for me, like a creator kind of frames something. Our idea here was to facilitate spaces for things to grow, and without trying to cut the ends of what is growing. So how we can create methodologies, spaces for self-representation, social justice, to make that happen, allow that, and also show that in the space. So the exhibition has like different layers. So the first layer is the main exhibition itself. So the artworks, the ethnographic objects, as I said before, we're an ethnographic museum and we have a collection as well. So the first layer is what you can see there as chapter 1, chapter 2. So the exhibition starts with about, the idea was to show these different types of anti-colonial resistance and the nuances that have regarding time, materiality, location. So the first chapter is liberation struggles, uprisings, and protests. So that means this loud type of resistance. So resistance on the streets, violent resistance, demonstrations, this kind of resistance that's available to the eye, that's recognizable, that's in the media, that's in social media, Black Lives Matter, for example. The second chapter is Subversion and Refusal. So that's a chapter about quiet or like non-visible types of resistance that, I mean, non-visible for the colonial view. So can be like use of language, like Creole language, use of music, also use of like writing, poetry, having different symbols that only a specific community can recognize and feel united in that. Chapter 3 is about the story, so it's called One's Own Stories, One's Own Narratives, and it's about the colonial history from the point of view of the one who was colonized, taking into account also pre-colonial stories as well. So a story non-filtered but Europeanized, but that was written by the people who were also dealing with the trauma now, which is like led us to chapter 4, which is trauma and transformation. How the repercussions of colonial time, how they're made, how it are made like available in the sense that we can deal with that, how we can, different people can access to the trauma and heal. And chapter 5, it's cultural resilience or the art of survival. So the idea is like, and now what's the future? What comes next? So that's basically, so the basic parkour of the exhibition. But that sounds like it's only the beginning. So as I said before, we have a collection, and when we are talking about participation, is okay, for whom is available that collection? So the first resource or like methodology way of working we had is to have artists in residency. These artists in residency have different materialities. So we have, for example, Rocky Abamba, who is a DJ, sound musician, sound director, and she worked with members of our staff, members of our community, and that what I mean is like our network, people living in Cologne, to gather sounds of resistance. So it can be like from the streets, a demonstration, but also like, I don't know, someone talking about what's in the museum and they couldn't see, or they don't have access, and that is a collection that was done also in cooperation with youngsters or young people from a collective we work with in another parts of the exhibition. So the other way of working also with young people was through the body. So we have Baja Göttgen and Daniela Rodriguez Romero, two artists, choreographers, urban or dance choreographers that also work with young people, and we had different workshops in the exhibition space, and not because the museum, it has it's the collection. No, we have a collection, as I said. This is an exhibition that's 1 year long, and we have what we call Dauerausstellung. So the exhibition that it's already like, it's been there for like 12 years already, and there are different positions, and the idea is to compare cultures. That was the concept, how it was done like 12 years ago. So they work in the Dauerausstellung, in that space, and with the staff and with different, and through the body, try to understand what resistance means, what means resistance for a museum from this young point of view. And regarding to the collection. The other is a photographer living in Cologne from Nigeria, and who documented not only what was happening during this last year in the city in connection to resistance. And that also means like in Germany, the situation changed a lot this year regarding museum work, restitution, repatriation. So just a brief comment. So like one of the rooms we have at the end that I will talk, they're about Nigeria, the Benin Bronzes from Nigeria, Edo State, Benin City, and the genocide of Nama and Herero people in Namibia, who was a German colony. And those topics changed a lot during the last year, and that's what Francis did. Document those processes, document what was also changing in our collection, as like how we displayed objects, how people interact with the exhibition. And the fourth artist in residency is Kirita Lena. She's an artist from the Philippines who works with photography, and the idea, that's a different way of working. She was analyzing our collection from the Philippines, photography collection. We have a collection of photography of 100,000 photographies. So she get the whole collection and focus on the collection from the Philippines and how bodies are displayed, how women are seeing this otherness and how she could engage with that to have like what we call in the ethnographic museum work, like provenance research. She tried to do kind of that work from an artist's perspective, to give stories and give a context, understanding where they come from and why they're there, how they can also come back, in a sense, so what the restitution can be for those images. The second, so I talked before, like we had the 5 chapters, then on top we have these artists in residency that connect with the collection, and then we have 3 process rooms. So we have a library of resistance, so a library where we have different books, we have videos, archive, but the most important thing is like we have a reading group. Once a month, we tackle different aspects of what resistance means, what also decolonization means in different ways, what unlearning means, and taking into account different authors. Bell Hooks, for example, or Grada Quilomba, also as an academic, an artist, and as an artist present in our exhibition as an artist. The second space, it's called Young Rebels. It's for young people. So, and this room, it starts with a methodology that this idea of carte blanche, this idea of giving freedom and also creating trust between different people. So the museum, I mean, I'm here in the role of the museum with them as well. This space, for example, they design it themselves. So we collaborate with 2 collectives. One is a Coach FV, a group of young migrants in Cologne, and where they have an empowerment academy, and they presented the videos they created, and they did a workshop with music and Roquiabamba to create songs where like they could tell their stories. And they're also present in that space. And then what you can see, this table and the curtains, it's in cooperation with another collective. It's a non-governmental organization in Corvila, in the northern part of the city. And what they do is have like workshop, like a 1-year program for like young people without a degree. So what they wanted to do is bring the workshop to because the museum is in the city center. So bring the workshop there. So that's why they scan the walls and then ask the people for what are you fighting? So like from this young perspective, what is that drives you here and brings you here? And they also cooperated, like they also created this third space with us, or like their part in the program is the Repair Atelier. So as I said before, the idea is to reach different publics, and that means that sometimes it's a reading group, the best to reach those people, but there is some that it's better to do things together. And that means that, so for example, like we have this printing workshop that we do with them, and they come like once a week with young people, and they debate or they talk about different themes of the exhibition, and they try to express themselves via creating posters. Or we have also a kintsugi workshop where like this, that's the technique with ceramics, where ceramic from Japan that can be a repair with gold, and that's like the virtue of this repair, like process of repair, this how we can like also see what's broken and the value that has afterwards. And the last part of the exhibition that I want to present, and also the that continues with this idea of carte blanche, and that's basically the main methodology we use for that, as the It's Yours rooms. There are 4 rooms that they are self-created, self-designed. So we, the museum, the director, Nanette Snoop, invited 4 activists, politicians, curators, art historians, to create rooms the way they wanted. So the first one, as I said before, it's created from Esther Odia Munyango and Ida Hoffman. There are two politicians and activists from Namibia, and they're from the room. They come from Esther is Nama, and Ida is Herero, and they fight for the recognition of the Nama and Herero genocide in Namibia from the German as a German colony. So the idea of their idea was how to convey those stories, how to tell their story and what they've been through and what they want to a German public. So that's also like decolonization. That's something we talked with Anna before. It's local. It's like it needs to be taken into consideration, like in a context. So the second room is created by Peju Layola. She's a Nigerian artist and art historian, and this room has the 96 Benin Bronzes we have in our collection at the time that we host. And so she invited different contemporary artists that work with those motifs, those stories behind the Benin Bronzes, to occupy the space, to share the space with those objects that they're hosted in the museum. And so that's the first time these Benin Bronzes are displayed in the museum. So 3 of them were in the other exhibition, but this is the first time that the whole collection is exhibited. And as I said before, the story changed in the last year. So Germany is the first country that wants to restitute the Benin Bronzes, so send them back before end of next year, taking in consideration what Nigeria, Edo State, and Benin City has to say about it, like how many objects. But the idea is to change this idea from ownership should be Nigerian, and we might have like some sort of usership in the future. So this idea of also negotiation. So this exhibition, one of the parts of the participation is not working with objects, but working with people. So this and what was said before, this idea of dead culture, I think it's dead objects, that these non-activated objects from past living cultures. So how can we create community? And this it's complicated. Also, like from my role point of view, I'm Argentinian, working in a German museum, an ethnographic museum. I think like different people can relate differently with what that means. But that's why it was also important to have this collective in our team, because like the other partners or like the other creators were in Nigeria. They live as well. Peju lives in Nigeria, now is in Cologne. Esther and Ida are in Namibia. And in-house is a collective in Cologne. So it's this anchor to our city, and they created a room where many migrants in Cologne could say like what they fear, what's their experience, what they want to see in the museum, how they want to react. And the fourth one is Simea Junghaus. She is a creator and director from ERIAC Institute, the European Center for Art and Culture from Roma and Sinti culture. And she created a space with contemporary artists from Roma and Sinti background. And so that comes also again to Europe. What does it mean, decolonialization in this context? Is it always in relation to other continents or extractivism? In which sense, how we can create this multivocality also through self-representation and methodology? And that comes to I come to the end. Resist, so the exhibition, what like the meaning for the museum, it has like, it's a starting point. So the aims were big, and it only started with the exhibition, and it extended with the public program. So this idea of exhibition is only the beginning. Like, we created different events to also have this kind of like this taken seriously what they have to say, and they could like create ways of conveying. So we had 3 different events with Peju Layola, and 2 in Nigeria, also online, she from Nigeria, 1 in Cologne, about like what does it mean, for example, for Germany or Cologne to send back the 96 Benin Bronzes. Like, what would be in reverse? Like, we have a big cathedral. What will be the trauma if like Nigerians take the dome to Nigeria to be seen there? So this also like taking, not only talking about like decolonialization and like as a buzzword, but like taking stories and talking with people and the specificity of those processes. And also like this idea of sustainability. So as I said before, Resist is only the beginning, but actually it wasn't the beginning. Like, before, there was called Baustelle. That was a space where different collectives in Cologne came to work with us. But trust, I think trust is the best way to explain like how we relate with each other, showing what we expect, what we want, and trust can only be done in sustainable way, like long-term relationship. That's why, like, maybe Anna, to your question about the future, it's a process. It's a way of working. It's all in this beta state. It's like going on, and this idea of fast creating, or like, yeah, we do something here and then there and with other people. That's not the way we want to work. And there are different steps, and without maybe like the idea of devising this future together, not like the museum as like, okay, that's the horizon, we should go all there, but like how we can discover, or like, okay, maybe discover is not the right word in this context, but how we can also draw this future together. So that's all from my side.
Agustina, thank you so much for your presentation. That is really super interesting, very thoughtful, and very accurate, and very inspiring. I think there will be many questions, but maybe we keep them for the end in order to maybe open up a dialogue. So now I pass the mic to Danielle, and sorry, it's always a bit complicated, but okay, there you go.
Great, thank you so much. Just a quick, do I say next slide, or can somebody give me the control? That would be.
I say maybe.
Yeah, Christina,
you have to tell me next.
I will tell you next. Okay. So let me see how this works. Thank you again for the invitation to be part of this great program, and what a great way to follow up Agustina with her presentation, which was really inspiring. I called my presentation "Let's Talk Listening," and what you probably will notice, Anna, I don't use the word decolonization or decolonizing because of the problematics about the word and the many lives it is living at the moment. So I'm trying to approach it in a different way. So here we go. So My presentation is called Let's Talk Listening. When we at Imagine IC celebrated our 20th anniversary in 2019, we set up a seminar called Let's Talk Listening. During the day, we looked to the act of listening. As we were also busy with voices and voicing, but how to listen to the different voices and to the different stories. So how have you been listening this morning so far? Like a sponge taking in all the information? Like a scanner sifting through the information to get the few bits you're interested in? Present, absent? Still thinking of the conversations you had already yesterday? So in the next few minutes, I would like to share a bit about my work at Imagine IC. Next slide, please. So just a little context of our center of the city, Amsterdam Southeast. So we are located at the outskirts of Amsterdam, where we share the house with the public library. Next slide, please. Like many places in an area which narrative consists of many layers of time and space, and where the constant negotiations of creating a sense of home and living together in an ever-changing environment creates dynamic social fabrics of the area. Amsterdam Southeast used to be a polder area, but in the 50s, Amsterdam wanted to expand. This was the start of a modernistic development of the Bijlmer, which became the center of Amsterdam Southeast. This part of town have since then welcomed new citizens from all over the world, making it a super diverse district. Next slide, please. It is in this part of town Imagine IC is working. We often say we are a mix between a museum and archive, but above all, we are a conversation space, where the process of heritage making as part of negotiating the parameters of contemporary living together is on the agenda. For us, heritage has a constituent function. We keep that, but we need to shape the future, and we use it to keep finding out who we are. We do this in and with the networks in the district of Amsterdam Southeast. And a couple of our main core things is we want to activate, we want to constantly critically reflect, and we want to update. We want to negotiate the concepts of heritage with networks. We research the process of meaning making. We suggest updates for local and national collections. We hold spaces and perspectives with and for people to act, and we update collecting concepts and methodologies. Next slide, please. We do this participatory, working from concept of heritage democracy. This idea derived from deep democracy from South Africa, which looks at all voices and not just the majority voice. Next slide, please. In our space of conversation, we have temporary exhibitions as vehicles of what has been shared and as an invitation to share more. So our projects are more or less open-ended, and the exhibition is never the end goal. The topics that we address are topics brought in by our networks, so we don't come up with the ideas. Next slide, please. Together we add, update, annotate, and remove items and topics in what we call the Neighborhood Archive, a collection of stories that are individual but also connected and together show parts of that fabric of the neighborhood I was talking about. Next slide. So what I will do is I will show you one project so I can go through the stages how we work, and then I will end with a couple of other ones. Yes, next slide, please. So the project I briefly want to highlight with you is that of the 25th commemoration of the Bijlmer disaster. On October 4, 1992, an El Al cargo plane crashed into the high-rise buildings Groeneveld and Kruidberg in Amsterdam Southeast District. The following days, residents and relatives in the vicinity of the disaster Sites set up meetings, places that could function as information centers, but also offer solace and support. Under the tree that saw everything, people left flowers, pictures of victims, drawings, letters, and toys. This informal memorial would later become the heart of the formal monument that Mayor Fontaine promised shortly after the disaster. Officially, 43 people lost their lives, but as many undocumented were also living here, an actual number can never be given. And because of that, every time we tell this story, we keep on repeating this, that more people lost their lives. So, in the days after the crash, stories started to go around as people in white overalls had been seen at the crash site. There were different readings about the cargo, whether it was carrying toxic material. People started to be wary as they felt things were not explained. For them, the whole disaster was conveyed in a mist of by the officials. Next slide, please. Like I mentioned about the other topics that we addressed, this was also brought in to us in an active request from the network to be put on our agenda. As for some people, there was a strong desire to use the 25th commemoration for their own social needs, bringing the Bijlmer disaster to the national stage, getting the attention it deserves, even after 25 years. There was still strong sentiment that the disaster never received the national attention and compassion, that there was a lack of national support in the aftermath. Feelings of disappointment, distrust because they did not feel heard were still very much present. Some even said their feelings were fueled more or started after the firework disaster in Enschede that we had in the Netherlands and also the big flight disaster of MH17. As in their minds, the national compassion that was showed in those two cases were more present. We always start our trajectories with walk-in sessions. For this, we met with a big variety of people that connected in different ways to this disaster. Firefighters, radio makers, neighbors, survivors, relatives of victims, churches. Some people saw each other for the first time again after many years. So the social aspect of these first gatherings are also always very important. From this meeting, many more will follow always, and in groups and individual. Next slide, please. So we collected and brought a variety of personal objects, archives, artworks, etc. Our approach of the exhibition was not to tell the story of the disaster, not the timeline with the facts, but to explore the emotions, tell the stories of people, how they commemorate and look back 25 years later. What is the heritage of this disaster? Next slide, please. For this, we also got some objects from institutional partners to start a dialogue with the personal archives. Also to connect this story with what was felt so local to national collections. Like the minutes of the Council of the Ministers at the time of the disaster, which were disclosed after 25 years by the National Archives. Here the discussion to get the archival material in original state in an exhibition space that is not climatized was an interesting but important journey to creating urgency for this topic and having originals in the Bijlmer where the disaster took place. Next slide, please. The exhibition anchors the disaster in a collected corpus of stories, objects, and images of eyewitnesses, local residents and relatives, social workers, researchers, and administrators from then and now. Another thing that we did was a partnership with a TV program called Andere Tijden, Different Times, to create an episode on the Bijlmer disaster with personal projects, bringing it to the fore on national television. Next slide, please. So here you see some pictures of the opening and the follow-up programs that we organized from it. Next slide, please. Another project we did was Saya and Koso, Layers of Fabrics and Time, a project on the meaning, the making, and the traditions of wearing these clothings. These traditional clothings come from Suriname and the Antilles, have become part of our daily life in the Netherlands and the traditions that come with it, as very much alive in our part of time. In this project, we discussed the meaning on these traditional clothing, how these scarves and skirts are passed on from mother to daughter, how some kept these in boxes and sometimes take them out to smell and be near it still, to be near the history of it, how others started to have an interest in it only after they moved to the Netherlands and started to dive in the history and how to make it. This project was done together with the Trophy Museum, which is part of the Ethnographic Museums of World Cultures. Every year we do a project with them where we connect our theme to their collections. A little on how we work with partners. We are for many bigger institutions to go to gain access to our networks. But we refrain of being just a Rolodex with contacts in our partnership. We find it important that when institutions work with us, they fully commit and engage with the networks to find new understandings of heritage work. With partners like the Amsterdam City Archive, the Trophy Museum is part of the Museum of World Cultures, the Amsterdam Museum and the Museum van Loon, to name a few, we discuss different collecting and collection questions. These institutional partners are not having these discussions just with us or with each other, but more importantly with people from our neighborhood network. Participants that come to us with personal stories, archives and objects. For us, they are as much experts at the table as anybody else. During the sessions, we look at how to balance interest, importance, expectations of institutional and that of private participants. We talk about the process of collecting, the requirements under which objects are obtained, and from that moment under what circumstances can or cannot be shown. How selections are made, the narratives that are told, questions of safeguarding for future generations opposed to accessibility for generations now. What current hierarchies are at place about ownership and authority, and how institutional expertise knowledge are opposed to knowledge based on experience or oral traditions. Next slide, please. So what are the ethics of collecting we abide by? And whose ethics are they? Since 3 years, we have a canoe from Ghana in-house, and I don't have a picture, so I'm showing. Oh, you see the picture with a little bit of the stairs and the big blow-ups, and if you look at the top of the picture, you see the bottom of a canoe. That was the best picture I had from back home now. So this canoe is an object from the Trophy Museum that had never been exhibited. It was also not on the planning to be in one for the near future. In sessions, participants we're talking about objects that they connect a sense of home to. And we found out that this canoe represented for many a sense of home. We then decided to negotiate if the canoe could come to us, close to those that connect to it. Mind you, this comes with some challenges. Our house is not climatized, as I pointed out before. We are part of the library. We share the house with the public library, and on paper, therefore, there are many reasons not to approve such a move to us. But it was decided that the object was of greater value in our district than locked away in a depot where it was safeguarded for eternity. So the coming years, we will take part in a national project called Pressing Matters, Ownership, Value and the Question of Colonial Heritage in Museums, that is headed by the Museum of World Cultures and the Vrije Universiteit of Amsterdam. The national research tries to go beyond questions such as where do the colonial objects come from and to whom do they belong, but also for whom do they carry meaning today, and where is this meaning most relevant? With the title, I Know Where Your House Lives, Stories of Homelessness, Imagine I See will look at the different homes that we humans embody and also the homes of our objects. So how to look, consider and work with the concept of multiple homes, neither here nor there, or here and there, and what happens in the in-between space. Next slide, please. So just briefly, 2 other projects. There was a project that we did on a parking garage, which had a social role in the neighborhood. It was not only a parking garage, but it was a meeting space, a blanco canvas for graffiti artists, and a church. And then later, when it was no longer used for parking, it became a home for undocumented. So Amela Kadour lived there for 3 years. He created it his home. So there was a group of people that wanted to save this building, but there was also a group of people that wanted it to be demolished. And after 3 years of going back and forward, it was decided to be demolished. But in between, we started to collect the different stories that this building layered on up. And with the stories we collected, but also with the objects that we taken from the garage, with pictures that we taken, and with videos, we created a monument of the mind. So with the film, we created a VR film, so you can still, through that VR film, visit the garage. And with the pictures that we were taking from graffiti, we created a book on the history of graffiti in the Bijlmer, and also the role this garage played in the development of graffiti artists that came from all over the world. Next slide, please. So as last, I would also say that for our educational programs that we develop for primary and secondary schools, we work with the concept of emotion networking, a concept that is developed by the Rijnmond Academy in Amsterdam and Imagine IC, which is a visualization method to show your own position and that of others. It was created as we felt a need to have a tool to make clear that heritage is something dynamic. In our view, heritage is a constant process of accepting and rejecting. Heritage is not a given, but something we make together by addressing different meanings through different perspectives. The method is an exercise in expressing yourself through your emotions and to listening, to create awareness of different positionalities, as an invitation to step out of your own bubble for a minute. Next slide, please. So back to the listening. I've been talking quite a lot actually, so I'm going to wrap up now. In our work, we try to listen to the neighborhood and to those topics they feel are urgent. When then working on the topic, we also listen. If you sit in a conversation with a set idea for an exhibition or a project in mind, you often forget to listen openly. Most of the time, you do not get the information you want to get, and on top, you have missed a lot of what has been said. So sit down and listen with an open mindset to the different stories, listen to the undertones, the emotions, how significance is attributed to items, moments, traditions. As it's for us exactly this that is important to have conversations about. The different ways we attribute significance, not just collect stories in an effort to create multifocality, but to use them as vehicles for conversations, trying to find out what these stories mean to the teller and what they do to others. How we then, in turn, can invite people to listen to each other, looking at their own position and taking in other perspectives. So when we collect, how do we listen? And how can we do the collecting with care? So if you talk about what my future ambition would be, so how can we do our work, putting care in the center? And like what Augustina was saying, not the object, but the person. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Danielle, for your actually moving presentation to me. I was thinking that I feel at home in your in the way you present your work, but also the pictures you showed to me felt like so many people feel at home at Imagine I See. That was the feeling, but maybe we will have time to the way you go back to that. Work, but also the pictures you showed. Yeah. Okay, Françoise, I think there is a little delay. At Imagine I See, that was the feeling, but maybe we will have time to okay. Go back to that. Okay, fine. So, Françoise, I think there is a little delay. I would ask Françoise and Alina maybe to turn off their mics because there is some kind of return. Thank you. I'm not sure that, yeah, okay, fine. So, yes, welcome our last guests for the morning, Françoise d'Allemagne and Alina Maggiore. Françoise is chargée de recherche et de collection at the Museo in Marseille. And Alina Maggiore is PhD candidate in cultural and social anthropology and European and Mediterranean ethnology in Freiburg. Is that correct? Yes. So, okay, fine, both. So they are co-curating an exhibition and working on a common project. Ethnology in Freiburg. That's correct. Yes. Okay. So I just pass the mic because there is some noise in the background, but we have about 15 to 20 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will share my screen and we will also both talk, but not from the same computer. So we will turn on and off our mics, that is fine.
I think you need to switch on and off the mic anytime, both of you, because otherwise there is a superposition. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I will share the screen if I can. Do you see my screen? Yes. Okay. Yes. Perfect. Thank you very much. So,
yeah, thank you for the invitation and hello to everybody.
Yes.
So before Alina present and will speak, you hear me? Yes. Okay. Before Alina will present the Barvalo exhibition, I will present briefly the museum. So Alina, yes, okay. So Museum, National Museum in Marseille, and Museum meaning Museum of Civilizations of Europe and Mediterranean. So it was opened in 2013 when Marseille was European Capital of Culture in 2013. So you can see there are 3 sites for the museum. So the museum built by Rudy Ricciotti, linked with the historical Fort Saint-Jean with several exhibition rooms, and the storage building near the railway station in another site. So the museum, since its opening, received more than 1 million visitors each year, before COVID, of course, and presents about 15 exhibitions each year. There is also a research center with seminars and conference, teaching and training, collated surveys, and a very wide cultural program with theater, music, dance, cinema, conferences, etc. For the collection, we have in legacy the collections of the National Museum of Popular Arts and Tradition of Paris, and the European collections of the Mancal Museum, founded in 1937, also in Paris. And we enlarged the geographic field to countries all around Mediterranean, with Maghreb and Mashrek until Turkey to the east. So it's to you, Alina.
Okay, thank you very much for passing me the mic, Françoise. And I also wanted to say thank you very much for the conveners and to the audience too. for the invitation, and we are very delighted to be able to present today our work in the midst of such cutting edge and progressive practices and of such distinguished colleagues. So thank you very much. So as you saw in the title, I just wanted to say a quick word regarding terminology, because in our minds, so what we're talking about is a collaborative exhibition, and to us, and I think we can discuss this, and we saw it also in the other presentation, collaboration to us, we use this word because we regard it as different to participation, because it doesn't only grant access, it actually does also address questions of power and of decision making. So what I wanted to tell you is that at Museo, this is not the first endeavor of developing collaborative practices, but let's say at our collections department, from which we speak of today, this is these two exhibitions. So I will briefly highlight the other one, and of course ours, Barvelo, I will talk about a little bit more. So for AJV and oh, and sorry, I wanted to make another quick point on terminology also, because what both exhibitions have in common is that they collaborate with vulnerable communities. So in our viewpoint, vulnerable communities are situated in marginalized and exploited positions in society, but also in museums. And what happens is that they're often represented through exotization, stereotypes, and they're being otherized in the course of exhibition and displays. So what AJV, the exhibition on the epidemic, which is about to open at Museo, what they did was they conceived it with a group of researchers, activists, caregivers, and other people living with the virus who are all concerned by this epidemic. And we, on the other hand, with Barvelo, we are working together with people who identify as Roma. So I'll come to this description, let's say, to this name a little bit afterwards. And also with researchers and activists who are associated and working with Roma people. So a bit about how the exhibition project came about. So Jonas Steinberg, a professor of anthropology at the University of Vermont in the United States, proposed it, actually pitched the project to the Museo presidency. And it was then assigned to Julia Ferloni, who is the curator of collections for artisanship, industry, and trade. And when they started working together, they became increasingly aware, of the Romani political, scientific, and cultural movements for self-representation, which are fighting for participation in knowledge production and policy making. And so these activists also addressed precisely institutions of scientific and museal scope, like ours, among others. So that's when, in 2018, they invited Anna Mirga Kruszelnika, the deputy director of ERIAC. So we already saw ERIAC briefly before, so the European Roma Institute of Arts and Culture. They asked Anna to join the curatorial team as its third lead curator. And Anna Mirga Kruszelnika is at the head of this newly founded society, which is supported by the German Federal Foreign Office and the Council of Europe, and has the aim of informing non-Roma of the art and culture of Romani people, and at the same time creating strategic partnerships to support art and culture projects from within Roma communities. And at the same moment, when Anna was invited and gladly accepted, the members of the committee of experts were selected. So you see the other pictures here of our colleagues, which have the role to advise and to consult the curatorial team. And I will give you a bit more information about them. So they come from different countries. We have Europeans, but also people from, as I said, the United States, but also from Syria, and we have 70 members who actually identify as members of Romani groups. So for those of you who don't know, the Roma populations are divided, let's say, or it's more of an umbrella term for different groups who spread in the world, but also in different European countries. So we have Roma and Sinti, and we have Manouche, which are the French Sinti. We have Gitans, which are both in France and Spain, and French travelers, which call themselves voyageurs in French. And what they all have in common, these persons, is that they're activists struggling for the recognition of Roma rights and also against anti-Gypsyism. So let's move closer to the exhibition. So what do we want? What are our objectives? We wanted to, and which was the consensus, because it was not easy, as you can imagine, to establish a consensus between such a diverse group and team. So we want to defy the vision of Roma as a singular, fixed, and static entity. We want to shed light on the history of Roma in Europe, and we want to talk about anti-Gypsyism as a form of structural and institutional racism and its mechanisms of exclusion. And we also want to take into account the current preoccupations of Roma individuals and groups as a primary perspective, but also, of course, that of the Gaje, which is the Roma word for non-Roma. So for me, for example. So I will show you in the next slide. This is a diagram which Julia Ferloni designed to visualize the levels of collaboration and the links between the projects and the stakeholders. So as you can see, and as you can imagine, this is actually shows the complex entangledness of negotiations with and among the diverse exhibition and museum staff. So we will come to the different projects and collateral endeavors in the next slides, because here we will talk, and I'll give back the mic to Françoise about in a second. So we will give a quick spotlight on what we are doing as a reindexation, decolonization of collections, the documentation of collections, the acquisitions, and a bit more on the collated survey. So these are maybe also French museal landscape specific terms. We will explain them hopefully best in a few seconds. So Françoise, c'est à toi.
Yes. So for the museum, we speak often of decolonizing the museums, the discourses and the databases, because the work was engaged with collection in a colonial context. But concerning Roma population, we prefer in Musem to speak of ethical and inclusive manners and of unconscious racism from part of the institution. There is in Musem no colonial context for Roma collection, and we don't have any artifact to restitute in the Musem collections. You can see on this slide, while working on the synopsis of the exhibition to explain what we wanted to say and show, so we made researches in the Musem database to find all the artifacts linked to Roma people, about 900 items. But those European collections, constituted mostly between the end of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century, were very stigmatizing images of Roma population, and of course, representation made by non-Roma persons. So you can see on the slide two notices of the database. On the left, a fairground game with the head of a Gitan woman, a caricatural head with long nose, earrings, and long hair, on which you had to throw a ball to win. So a very stigmatizing representation of a Roma person. And on the second slide, it's a popular picture showing musician near a tent and a car passing on a road. The keywords on the notice of the database are gypsy, musicians, begging, and nomadism. So nothing can tell you they are gypsies only because they live in a tent, and they are immediately associated with nomadism and begging. So to avoid this unconscious racism from part of the institution, that means an unwanted racism, but misled by the different ways of describing the Roma population, we engaged a work, a reflection on the database. First, for the denomination, we had many workshops with the Bavalo experts you saw on the photographs on the different terms to use, to use the self-denominations, the endonyms, and also on the different terms to avoid, such as Tzigan, Bohemian, Romanichel, which are very racist words to denominate Roma people. So that the people can understand these representations, all stereotyped images, very stigmatizing and racist images. And we had also discussions on certain terms in Romani language to use in the exhibition, like the words Brajmos or Samudaripen, which are the words for the Roma genocide. Some of our experts were absolutely against using those words, saying that it would put the Roma genocide apart from the history of the World War II. And so we'll use the term in the exhibition of Holocaust, the word used also for the Jew genocide. You can pass, Alina. So like you can see also a drawing made by Julia. She found this very training device to explain to the Barvalo expert how we work in a museum, how we constitute a collection, how we build an exhibition, how we describe objects, and how we include them in the work of the museum. So this work was engaged with the Barvalo experts on the museum collection to include a Roma heritage. You can pass, Talina. And we also had interviews, seminars, and workshops during the conceptual webinars with the expert to decide what we wanted to show, what they wanted to show, and also what they didn't want absolutely to show. So they wanted to avoid hurtful or devalorizing items of our artwork. They wanted to avoid miserabilism and victimization. They wanted to avoid to show stereotypes. And they wanted also to inverse the position of the visitors, to inverse the gaze, and to include him in the exhibition. You can see on the right photos from Mathieu Pernaut, which are devalued images made in Romania or in Arles with a family instead of what he wanted to show with his family he was very close to. So he wanted to put them in the light, and he does the contrary, though he made a very relevant work on the internment camp of Salier in Camargue and Roma survivors. You can pass.
Thank you, Françoise. So yes, so as I promised, I'll come back to the term of collated survey. So in the course of 3 years, so from 2018 on, we started a Romani professions and know-how in Europe and the Mediterranean collated survey, during the course of which several objects were acquired. So a collated survey is a research program aimed at tasking and coordinating specialists in multidisciplinary fields linked to Romani studies with short-term field research in their respective fieldwork areas. And their scientific contributions help shape and focus the content of the exhibition, but at the same time, the objects and the audiovisual material they collect on the field enriches museums' collections and more largely French national heritage. So we have here 2 examples of the several ones we have been able to acquire. So we have on the left an object that accompanied the sensitive cartography, so research that was done by the geographer Elise Olmedo in a postdoctoral residency at Museo with Sasha Zanko, who is a Roma from the Toulon region, from Toulon, so from very close to Marseille. And the subject of this research was his polyvalent professional life, which led up to his current activity as a tinsmith. So we acquired this tin plate, which is used for the preparation of lentil-based specialty from the southern French area. And then on the right-hand side, we have another very interesting project. So we acquired this carpet, as you can see in the picture, which was hand-woven by a collective of Syrian Doma women, which had recently immigrated in France. So the Doma are a cousin population which settled in Lebanon and Syria. So a cousin population of the Roma, sorry. And they created this carpet together with residents of Saint-Denis, so close to Paris, where they also live, and a local activist and artist collective, which is called the Briche. So these are acquisitions from the collated survey, and Françoise will tell you about other acquisitions.
Yes, to constitute, we wanted also to constitute a Roma heritage of contemporary art in the museum collections. So we proposed to acquire several pieces of art made by Roma artists, such as this on the left painting by Chaya Stoichka, which was an autodidact Hungarian artist deported in Auschwitz during the Second World War. And she testified many years after the genocide of the persecution and what she lived in the internment camp. And some pieces of art on the right, acquired some paintings acquired by the museum from a Gitan artist, Gabi Jimenez, who is also part of the circle of experts. Gabi is a militant artist fighting against anti-Tsiganism. And we have also acquired this year creation from the Polish artist Malgorzata Mirgatas, who is Roma and who is going to represent her country, so Poland, for the next Venice Biennale.
So we're almost coming to an end. I just wanted to talk briefly. So we wanted to present briefly the structure of the exhibition to you, to have an idea what we're doing or what we were working on in the past 5 to 6 years. So because it's actually a very long process we're in. So beyond contextualizing in the first part, the Roma, the self-assertion of Roma people in Europe and their liberation movements in the context of the larger European history, we also wanted to highlight portraits of well-known but also lesser-known Roma professionals or individuals. But in the second part of the exhibition, we want to introduce the Gagiology Cabinet, which is a new proposition we're making. So we want to create a reflexive space in which we, as members of the national institution, but also the visitor, can reverse the gaze. So it's a kind of laboratory. It's an experiment that humorously points the finger at representational practices of the ethnographic museum. So here it's split into parts. So we have on the one hand a mockumentary. So for those who are not familiar with the term, it's a fake documentary, let's say, which has a humorous tone, in which we have possibly a Roma film director portray the society, the minority society of the Gaggio. So it's kind of, we're developing here the kind of utopian society in which Roma are the majority and the Gaggio, so we non-Roma, are the minority. And we will show in this documentary, but also in the in the Gaggio Museum, so the Gaggio Ethnographic Museum, the customs and the way of life of the non-Roma. So we will have vitrines on the sedentarization process, on the rituals around birth and death, but also others. So I will not spoiler too much, but this is kind of one practice that we could call, let's say, decolonizing, because it really takes a twist, a turn on the practices of the museum in itself, inside the museum. So I don't know if we still have time. I also cannot see the conveners. I'm sorry, but what
you can, you have a few minutes. No problem.
Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to end on what else we are doing during and also after Barbalo. So what will come, because it's a temporary exhibition. It will open. I will give you the dates later, but it will open during 3 months in 2023. So what's going to stay? So what's the legacy? Let's say, how can we be sustainable with this effort? So on the one hand, what we're doing to involve people from Marseille in visiting the exhibition. So there's going to be a project from the public department that will go and take the non-visitors, as they call them, so residents of the farthernmost neighborhoods of Marseille to the museum. So there's an effort in doing that. Then on the other hand, we are trying to find out what actually the regular museum visitor expects from such an exhibition, because we did a focus group to find that out before, and we have to repeat this because we realized that the exhibition has developed, and it was actually very precious for us to see that the museum regular visitor has in fact many stereotypes regarding Roma, many prejudices, and very strong images and representations that come to mind that were coined by museums and by arts and culture in the last centuries. So what will happen after Barbalo? We want to organize itinerancies. So we want to have the exhibition travel to other museums, to possibly Roma museums or other hosting institutions. So we're open for suggestions in that regard. And also we will have, or we hope we can have, a very rich cultural program which will accompany the exhibition during its running time, in which we will have the possibility to showcase everything that is cultural production of Roma population in the contemporary time, which we cannot possibly include in the small exhibition space we have at our disposal. So I think we'll close here, unless Françoise has another remark, by saying I hope that we will all have you.
Yes, just adding that we will also use trilingual labels, Romani language also, to include the Roma visitors in the exhibition.
Yes, very important point. Thank you, Françoise. So to conclude with an invitation, I hope we will all see you in Musem in the summer of 2023. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we accept the invitation, of course. Thank you very, very much, not only for the horizon, but also for the generosity with which you described the process, the criticalities, the difficulties, the aims, and the methodologies. So thank you very, very much. There are some questions for you. And maybe you might also want to exchange, to ask questions to each other, I guess. I do have many, but I prefer to read the ones received. So the first one is for Françoise and Alina, about difficult objects or critical or contentious objects regarding the Barbalo exhibition. And in particular, are there maybe, do you imagine that there will be different expectations about those objects from the museum and the Roma communities. Different meanings and expectations about the objects shown.
Françoise, tu veux y aller? No? Okay. So, thank you very much. I don't know if it was the audience or our colleagues who posed the question, so thank you very much. I think it's a very relevant one, and yes, in fact, we were already confronted with this question because already the question of materiality has become very important to us in the process of creating the items list, which we're in. In fact, we have a huge deadline this month, or let's say next month, regarding that. So we're really in the midst of reflecting on this point. So what is materiality in this context, and which objects are relevant to attain our objectives also? Because as you saw from Wisam's collections, what we presented to you, we have objects that were not met with enthusiasm by our team, and which we discussed very thoroughly and very controversially, but which were also clear to us from the beginning that we would not include. But as Françoise also said, we had discussions on the question of stereotypes, how much space we want to give the representations that have been there so far, and how much are we also trying to coin a new kind of representation, and new visions, and new memories. So we had a lot of food for thought on this question. And the question of the difficult objects, I think I don't know if I can be very verbal around this question, but I think we have had different approaches as to the representation of French traveler communities in the museum and outside the museum. So as Françoise said, we were researching on how to include Romani heritage from French travelers, and the propositions that were made did not exactly necessarily meet the expectations of the museum. So we are in the midst of negotiating here and of researching sorry for being very long, but for trying to make understand that it's about self-representation, and it's about the communities having their own vision and wanting to see that also in the museum and in the collections, because we're talking not only about the exhibition, but also about something that is going to last longer than that. So I don't know if I answered the question. And
sorry for jumping in. This is Carolina from Mudec. Sorry for jumping in. The question was mine. Thank you. Yes, you answered very well my question, and I think that we as museum curator have all the same problem with this difficult material. So it's nice to hear from you how you address the problem, and that you feel the same trouble that we feel when dealing with this kind of object. Thank you so much.
Yes, I wanted to add also that for certain stereotyped objects and artifacts, we had the idea to give the comment, to film, to make a video of an anthropologist, a Roma person, commenting those artifacts and explaining why they are stereotyped images and representations also in the course of the exhibition.
Thank you so much.
We have another question for you all, and it is in the experience of Milano Città Mondo. We have noticed that relations with the first and the subsequent generations inevitably lead to very different responses. In your experience, if you encountered a similar situation, how did you manage to bring together sometimes very different points of view, even within the same cultural community? So about working with different generations. Agustina, I see you nodding.
Yeah, and it's not only that. I will say, like, also, like, because we work, for example, with communities in Nigeria, living in Nigeria, with first generation in Europe and second generation. And that's also a gap. So I think, like, bringing together, like, what does it mean? Like, in a sense of, they have different needs. I think it's important to acknowledge those different needs. And sometimes first generation, like one of the examples, like, for example, we work with Roma communities here to also bring that together. The first generation is acknowledgement. So we want our things in the museum. We want to be seen. Second generation, it's we don't want to show everything, maybe. So how we can, like, think about these different, although they have the same cultural community, is it the same? There are nuances. I think that that's also important when we talk about, like, communities. It needs to be really precise who is talking, and not like, and even between, like, first generations, there are differences. So giving respect, hearing all what they need, and also coming into discussion, like, why is that important for you, like, understanding the other position, and then create a space where there is dissonance, and that's okay. I don't know if that answers the question. But
thank you. Does anybody else want to answer?
Yeah, I can follow up the same as Agustina, and I think there's, from where we work, we don't work so much with what you would call in the old days the source community. So we work very much in Southeast. But what we see is first, second, third generation, but also those that come and have mixed backgrounds. And often these are left out in all the discussions and that has to do with talking about communities. And they're just struggling because to what community do they belong? So we try to nuance it by talking about networks, and people are more fluidly moving around different networks, and try to, like you were doing, Agustina, is creating spaces where the different both generations, but also the age groups, but also the mixed backgrounds can all come together and share their experiences and their points of view, because sometimes there is no space at home to discuss these things, or they're not, often in a lot of the cases, the first generation is not talking. And then the second generation is curious, and then the third is just going to the street. So there's different approaches, and it's important to bring them also together, to have conversations about that, and to indeed acknowledge the dissonance between where we all come from. We all differ from the older generations, and will also be different from later. And we need to not come and always try to, and that's something that museums always try to do, to come to consensus and compromise, but have space for the dissonance.
Thank you, Danielle.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know if I can just chime in on this one. And I also wanted to say once again that I was very impressed by our two prior speakers, and Agustina and Danielle's presentations, which really humbled us to see with how many networks of people and how many different stakeholders you had to negotiate, and what kind of diverse results you can have. And but I guess that was a really hard and challenging, or let's say very productive time also for your respective institutions and agencies. But I also wanted to, I think the listening part really spoke to me from Danielle's presentation, and also the aspect of care, because I think what is a big effort of our DD curator, Julia Carloni, is actually to go towards each and every member of our team and to have them speak out about their views. So I think this is something that is that kind of also gets lost in big group discussions, which we also have. So we have interviews with our team members, and we have one-on-one conversation on a very regular basis to make sure that there is kind of a care for another point of view. But it's also a big question how to make sure that this doesn't just stay a ritual, but that it becomes kind of visible in the exhibition. And we have a very difficult scope for this exhibition, because we want to say something about such a vast array of populations. So this kind of resonates with me. What Agustina presented, the amount of space and the amount of time that was invested in all of these different communities, but also Danielle, of course. So how do we deal with that? It's a big challenge, and we also have a big problem with the question of consensus. Because we also have we have expectations towards the visitor. So how much can the visitor follow? If you have to inform about very basic information about Roma people, that is actually the things I said in the presentation. So it's a big challenge for us, and I think I can speak for a long time about this because it's my PhD interest. But I'm very happy to have your insights on this. Thank you. Yeah.
Another question from the audience is, well, thanks for the very interesting presentations. First, I see some commonality of intent between all these cultural institutions from different parts of the Western world. I was wondering to what extent the recent debate and public discourse triggered by the Black Lives Matter movement had a role in stimulating you to propose a decolonial approach to ethnographic museology. Yes, Danielle, thanks.
I think it's different from us than to the other one. So I will just kick off. For us as an organization, it didn't, because this is a methodology we've been working on for 20 years. And we sometimes say, and that's not because we know change is going slow, but sometimes we think, so we are already trying to get democratic approaches for 20 years. Maybe we do something wrong that it takes so long. But of course, we did see that Black Lives Matter created a big push worldwide. And finally, and maybe also the combination with COVID and being stuck at home also created space in museums to maybe finally do something with it. And what we see is that in the last year and a half that we were approached a lot by different big museums to work with us. And that's also why I made a little statement about also then how we see these corporations and how should you work together. Where we don't want to become the Rolodex, but to think about what we find very important. If you talk about the dot on the horizon, for me that's heritage justice. So that goes one step further from democracy, but heritage justice, and how can we reach that?
Maybe I can jump in. I think for us, I mean, it's a different institution. For us, it didn't stimulate. I mean, we were like, this exhibition opened last year, January, and it was like 3 years in the process of making with that same concept and idea, but it gave us hope and a different media platform. So it reached more people. They were media interested. And the hope, it was like, okay, there is no way back. Kind of like, okay, yeah, there is no way to hide this. There is no, so that was how it influenced the most for me, for us, museum.
I don't know whether Françoise wants to react, but I think, yeah.
Well, it's very recent for the museum to work on decolonizing the discourse, and because we are a new museum, in fact, even if we have in legacy old collection, but it's essentially French collections and European collections, and not constituted in a colonial context. So we let's have this decolonizing ideas in the work of the museum, expect with those collaborative exhibition on minority, like on AIDS, and with this Barvalo exhibition on Roma people.
Yeah, I think my response would be equal to that too of Françoise, obviously, but also Danielle, that actually it's kind of the demands of Black Lives Matter is kind of very we're very responsive to that as an exhibition team, but it doesn't mean that we don't have to negotiate this inside the institution. And it's true that we this is kind of new to us, but on the other hand, we're here today to discuss with you, so it's kind of something that has become more there has more response, I think, very much since the worldwide protests. So that very gave us a lot of help, let's say, and support.
Yeah, Danielle.
I'm just curious, so maybe I can pose a question, and I'm also triggered a little bit, Françoise and Alina, by your saying about basically the history of your collection, and actually the absence of colonial trace in that. But I think, and that's also interesting in the whole talking about the colonial and decolonization, that it is also about the afterlives of the colonial past that actually are ingrained in our practices. So even though maybe we don't have, also for us, we don't have the Benin Bronzes in house, and in that sense, there's you would say there's not an immediate urgency. But the afterlife of the whole colonial thinking is so much there. If we talk about racism, that comes from that colonial mechanism. So therefore, I think, and that's also something that I'm saying as chair of COMCO from ICOM, that from the whole international museum world, it is a heritage that we all have to deal with in one way or another, and find a way of thinking about, and you were already showing that in the exhibition that you created about the thinking about stereotypes and nuances of wording, and so it's not talking to you, but it's talking also to everybody that is listening, that it's not only thinking, look at your collection and think, oh, this is, but think about the afterlives, because it's so much present in all societies at the moment, and we really have to deal with that.
Yes, of course. What I wanted to say that we work on those collections, even if they are not in colonial, well, not constituted in colonial context, but they are, of course, many stereotyped images, and that's why we have to work on the database and on the collection items to show that and to make understand the visitors that they are stereotypes, of course.
Yeah, absolutely, and I really loved the projects that you were showing. They're doing a great job, so thanks for that.
Can I say a comment?
Of course.
I think for us, it's easier to decolonize, because like we're the scene of the crime. like the problem is there. There is a way to hide it. So, I mean, it's not easy, the process, but we cannot say, maybe, we don't know. It's there. But there are nuances and scales, and even in smaller institutions. I was running a small space, and there are also stereotypes, and there are also instrumentalization or exoticization of artists or like points of view. So it's a different scales without the different roles. We need to work together also how to share that.
Thank you. There is a question for Agustina and about resist. Well, your method, your methodology of artist residencies and so on, that is very interesting. But the question is about the participation of communities and this very complex issue. You said better anti-racist perspective than celebrating multiculturalism per se. And the question is, isn't it a bit too intellectual? Do we risk to lose people?
Okay. So first of all, I think for us it's important to work in networks with other institutions in cooperation. So, and we work intersectional. That means also like it's not about diversity like the Benetton kind of style, but to think about like first and second generation people, living in the global south, and the idea, what we do is like, even with like, for example, the work we do with young people. So this workshop I was talking about in Corvaila, they're young people, 18-year-old without a secondary degree. And those are the ones who come to the exhibition once a week to do these posters. So I think it's about like finding cooperation partners and working together in also finding these affordances or ways of reach, because like we're a small team at the same time. I mean, we're a big museum, but the team is small, and this participation or like needs care, needs like being there, and knowing how to be there for these different publics is important. And we need to know who are we talking to, how to build those safer spaces, because it's the museum safe space. So like, but yeah. And so that's why like we have like from so workshops like printing, and like maybe it's like the entry point to debate about what means racism in Cologne. We have reading groups with like well-known authors that in the museum world they're read, like bell hooks, and that's another public. It's more like university, or but also some people come that it's like, okay, I never read that, but I came to the workshop, a printing workshop, and I thought that was interesting. So also like this kind of like complexity and giving like entry points, and then giving the freedom to wander around the exhibition and or the program and try to find each other. And that's why also we do like guided tours from people from the staff every week with different focus, and inviting also external people to do the guided tour with us, so that also we reach communities, people who are already there. And for me it's important this kind of like non-hyper intellectual diversity either, this like German art bubble, or like we talk about decolonization and these like words that we need meaning, and we need to like do, not just talk about. And that means not just being intellectual about it, but like try things even if sometimes don't work or don't work how we imagine.
Yes, thank you. I think we all agree completely with this perspective. And following that, another question for Alina and Françoise about the involvement of Roma people, because the stereotype is that it's a very close group of people where it's hard to conquer or to gain the trust and so on. And also, if I may ask a question myself, it is about your not being Roma people yourselves, which is also another issue when talking about representation and talking on behalf of somebody else, etc.
Did I get it right? So the first question was how we managed to collaborate, or we still manage to collaborate, okay? With
yes, the question actually is how to involve.
Yeah.
Roma people.
Françoise, do you want to go or shall I?
Well, they are most of them militant anyway. How Roma people we have in the circle of experts. So they are involved in a certain way. All of them. With against anti-Ziganism, against racism, for their self-representation. So as they are against involved, it's more easy for us to involve them in the elaboration of the exhibition, I think. Do you, Alina?
Yes. So I think we. I think I lost the video contact. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. So I think that yes, it's very true that we're working with what we call heritage professionals on the one hand, and also activists on the other. So we have people who are very used to the question of representation or posing that question to themselves and representing their communities to do so. But what is also true, I think, for not the stereotype of reclusiveness, but I think that the work that Julia Faroni and Jonas Steinberg and obviously also Anna Mirka did was to go towards the communities and go towards researchers, because we're talking about an intellectual sphere and an activist sphere that is not immense, that is very diverse in France, but it's not immense. So for France, Julia took all the different contacts that could be taken, and then we had Anna Mirka, who is obviously at a point of contact for so many communities, for so many institutions and societies in Europe. Do you still hear me?
Yes, we do. Perfectly.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just losing you over again on video. I'm sorry. So I think I want to finish on this just by saying that coming also to the question of representativity, it's a very hard one in our case, because we have such, as I said before, such a diverse community. We have so many conflicting points of view and so many stakeholders with different interests that it's very complicated for our case. And then if we add, obviously, let's say the divide, or let's say the question of representativity of us being non-Roma, there's a lot of work to do, and it's a big process, and it's a big question to us how to tackle this. But I think that over the years we have become allies, and I think that one of the practices, or we have developed different practices that kind of that have become meaningful for the Roma in the team, such as inviting them to speak with us. So we're very sorry to not have been able to invite one of our Roma representatives to the talk today, because we know that that they should be here too, and that they will give a very different perspective to ours. So I think this is a very important point to us. And on the other hand, what I wanted to say to the question of decolonization that Danielle spoke about before, in the context of Roma representation in museums, this exhibition is one of the first of its kind. So the question of having Roma sitting on these types of committees and on the curatorial team of such a large exhibition is not a common practice. So I think that we're thoroughly working and we're making a lot of mistakes, but we bear these questions very much in mind. So thank you very much for the question. Yeah.
And more than Roma and non-Roma, it's also professional of museum and non-professional of museum in this collaborative process. Also, the difficulties also, and the institution also a little, which is not perhaps already really ready for this kind of exhibition.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, thank you. And following this point, somebody asks if the experts of this collaborative museology are paid both at Musem and the other institutions, which is a very good question, I think.
Yes, the question of retribution is very important. And what we could find only is to have a collected survey where we have different ways of retribute those experts. But we have made collated surveys in double with one scientist and one anthropologist and one expert, for example, so expert from Barvalo. And also the other way is to acquire objects from those experts. For example, we have Sacha Zanko, who is Calderache, Ron Calderache, and we bought artifacts he made, which we show in the slide, and also artifacts he sends in markets. He sells in markets, sorry. Elina.
Can I just add that we had very thorough discussions regarding the remuneration part, because we are a big museum and the people we're working with us are aware of the fact that there are funds for different types of projects. So there are funds for a Jeff Koons exhibition, for example. And so how do we negotiate with them that there cannot be a standard remuneration for their work? We need to say that we, in the course of these discussions with the management, the different management levels, because we took it to different levels, because we couldn't understand, or we couldn't argue anymore for them coming very regularly to meetings with us without seeing any money for it. And the discussion was also turning around the fact that we are continuing the exploitation. So that was let's say the reproach, but we're continuing the exploitation of people that have seen themselves as informants, of contributors of knowledge, of practices, of know-hows in the whole of history until now. And I say that from a standing point of anthropology, which is also very sensitive to these questions. So we had to go to the management levels and explain to them this position, and here on the other side that it's an issue to treat our potential collaborators differently based on their origin, because we have this big problem in France where we do not speak about the origin, the ethnicity of people. We do not speak because we're legally not mandated to do so. So this is a very complex field, and it's highly problematic in many senses. So we try to come up with a big sponsored tour, a trip for all of our experts to the Sainte Marie de la Mer pilgrimage, which is actually something that is personally relevant to them as a place, and which can help shed meaning on our relationship with them. But we have to say that we're walking a thin line, because of course they came to the project knowing what would be in it for them, and it's also acknowledging their work, and it's also being a potential, resonating their work. But let's say the financial aspect is something that we are still trying to solve.
Would maybe somebody else like to add something to?
Yeah, I can. I think, like in many of the countries, it is an administrative a huge issue to get things done on this level, and to also because Imagine IC is subsidized by the city of Amsterdam, but art culture for a part, and the rest we have to apply funding for private and public funding. But to get on your budget something for that, they don't understand. So it is slowly like massaging that in there, that things are changing, and what we are doing is, as long as we cannot really work for everything with proper invoices, we think of different ways how to compensate them. Whether it is in, can I organize, do you want to participate in a training? Then I will buy you the training. Or can I, do you want any books or vouchers? Or do you want to use our spaces? Or to really think, and there where I see opportunities, I put them on the list, and then I ask them for moderators or things like that, so I can pay them. But it is a huge problem, which I think it needs to be solved, because we can no longer hide behind things like, yeah, but we are the official or we are the professional. What do you mean we are the professional? Yes, we are the institution, but they're as professional and the expert as much as we are. So it's a little dancing scheme that we're trying to do around it. But hopefully, we keep our fingers crossed. By keep on knocking on different doors, we will find a way to solve this problem.
For us, it's differently, actually, because we have a budget for diversity. So 15 museums, it's called like that. 15 museums in Germany were given a 5-year program for reach communities, and there two of my colleagues, Aurora Rodono and Carla de Andrade, who are the diversity managers. And there is a budget for people to come and give feedback or create workshops on, and also even like give guided tours to different communities. So it doesn't work always. So sometimes it's like finding like the loopholes in this bureaucratic system, because not everything is included. Like, for example, we cannot give food. Or like, it's like, you being a host without like buying a drink. But so we still need to play around. But at least we have that safety of like, we are allowed to do that with also it's nice, not just to be sneaky to pay someone. Yeah.
Funny, because we can buy food, so that's what we do.
We should do something together. You buy the food, we pay them.
Problem solving. Okay, thank you all so much. I think we have to stop here. I really want to thank you very, very much for your participation and for sharing all this amazing richness of thought and this really methodological, ethical, political, cultural horizon with us. So thank you very, very much. And for those who have followed so far, the appointment is at 2:20 this afternoon. And if you have time to stay with us, of course, you are welcome. So thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye-bye. Thank you.